another day of art. We are going to learn about different values and why they're important to make things look 3D versus 2D. We're going to do a simple drawing, turning a circle into a sphere. You might have done this before with me, but it's always good to practice because this goes with everything, all medias, and pretty much everything you're ever going to do in art always has to have the value system in it. So let's get started. Okay, bear with us. We always have to readjust a little with the camera. Hopefully my camera doesn't fall off. Hold on. We'll try. Okay. All right, so you have your piece of white paper. Any white paper will do today. I just have a plain piece of printer paper. I'm gonna start with, I'm just actually gonna use a number 2 pencil. And I should have sharpened it before we started, but that's okay. So we're gonna start with just a circle in the middle of our page. So you can either freehand your circle and put your circle in the middle of your page. Ooh, my circle not looking so circle-y. Or you can take something that is already a circle, put it on your paper, and draw around it. So I'm actually gonna do that because I'm feeling a little lazy. So I'm gonna put my circle in the middle of my page. Wow, somehow I even messed that up a little. That's okay. Okay. We're also gonna put in a horizon line. So this is just where if your ball is sitting on a table, this is basically the table. And I'm only gonna do it about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom of the circle. Okay. So whenever you're drawing, you're always going to want to have different values of whatever color it is. We're using graphite pencils today, so it's going to be different values of graphite pencil. You can draw. This is always a really good thing to do when you're starting off to help you remember to get multiple values in, is to make 5 boxes. You can use a ruler and draw that perfect if you want, or you can just sketch it on there like that. Your first value is always going to be the very lightest one. So my first value would be white because I'm working in black, essentially, and white. So this would be white, and then this value over here would be the darkest. So I would shade it using the tip of my pencil in a circular motion or short strokes. I'm going to fill this box in. And I'm just for the sake of time, because we don't want to sit here and watch me shade this in for 20 minutes. It's going to be not as perfectly shaded in as I would like it to be, but at least you'll get the idea. Now, I don't feel like that's dark enough. I need to get that even darker. It's not going to be necessarily black, but we want a really dark graphite color, which is what our pencils are made out of, graphite. So we're going to get it, it'll be a really dark gray. If you were using charcoal pencils, you would actually get it to black. Okay, so there is my darkest value, my lightest value. So then I'm gonna go to the middle, and I want a value that is in between the darkest and the lightest. So I'm going to shade it a little bit lighter to start, just because I don't want to get it too dark and then have to erase it and start all over. I think that's going to be too light. Doesn't feel like it's in between the lightest and the darkest to me. So I'm going to go over it again, just with a real light shading to darken it up a little bit more. And we'll get it I feel like we're getting close now. I'm going to switch directions. Sometimes when you're when you're trying to shade, it's good to go in the opposite direction. It makes it much smoother, cleaner look of the shading, not always staying in the same direction. All right, I feel like that's probably my medium value. So I have my lightest, my darkest, and my middle tone. So now I need to go and do this one, which is going to be in between the lightest and the medium. So I'm going to start again with my side of the tip of my pencil, shading lightly. And I don't want to get too dark because otherwise I'm gonna have to erase. Oh, I want to go just a little bit darker, but not much. I'm feeling like that's pretty good. I almost wonder if this one should be this one. So I'm going to shade this and see what I end up with, because this needs to be in between these two, but I'm thinking I may have gone too dark with my middle value. So we'll see what happens. Oops, got a little mark in there. Switch directions. Yep, I think I went too dark. That one should have been my second value. So I'm gonna make it the same color as that middle one for right now. And then I'm gonna go over and erase really lightly. See if I can't get that to lighten up a little bit. Erase in the opposite direction. Helps get me more equal tone color. Okay, all right. I'm actually thinking that's pretty good right there, just erasing that much. So I'm gonna fade this one out a little bit. I probably could even go a little lighter on this one. Okay, so there's my 5 values. Clean up my edges. You don't have to be this perfect. Okay, so here's my value scale from lightest to darkest in graphite pencil. So you can use artist pencils, you can use number 2, whatever you want. Shading tends to be a little easier with a number 2, or if you have a 4B or a 6B in artist pencils, that will work good for shading too. Okay, so now usually what you'd be looking at is a still life. A still life is any inanimate object like this right here that is sitting here, and I would turn off all the lights and have one light shining on it and hitting it. That would tell me where my light is hitting and where my shadows are. You can already kind of see it, even though I haven't turned off the overhead lights. You can still see that I'm creating a cast shadow right here. It's darker on this side of it. It's brighter on this side. So we're gonna pretend that this is a ball we're looking at, like a still life sitting in front of us with the light shining on it. So our light is gonna be shining from this angle. And it's gonna shine through and it's gonna hit right about here. So that's gonna end up being the lightest part of my, trying to see if you guys can see, lightest part of my sphere. And then as it goes this way, it's gonna start to go into shadow over here. And it's gonna get darker in here, but the absolute darkest spot is gonna be a cast shadow that's gonna come off of my sphere. And when you're working with a ball, the cast shadow always looks like a skinny, squished oval. So that's kind of how we're gonna go. Now, if I was getting really elaborate, I would shade the background and make it look like much more 3D and more dramatic than leaving it white. But it would take an awful long time to do that with graphite pencils, so I'm not gonna do that. So we're gonna just pretend that this is real dark black up here and this is a middle tone gray down here, and the light is shining and hitting our white ball, okay? So now I'm gonna just carefully erase this line a little bit. I want that line to be there, but I don't want it to be that bright. This is gonna be the lightest spot. So I don't really need to do a whole lot with that area right now. So I'm gonna go back here and just start shading my darker area. And I'm going with the shape of the ball. So it would have a nice curvature like this because the light's reflecting, pushing the shadow this way. The reason why you always want to have values and you want to think about where the light is hitting objects is because as you draw anything from a human face to a flower to a truck to a dragon to anything, you're always going to have somewhere where the light is brighter on it. And if you pay attention to that and you shade it in accordingly, it will look much more realistic. It'll look much more 3D. So we want to keep that in mind whenever we draw. Even when you paint, you have to think about it like that. It's not just in color pencils, graphite pencils, or charcoal. It's in watercolor, acrylic, oil, pretty much any medium that you're using. I have a blending stump right here that I'm going to use. You could use your finger if you want to, or a Q-tip. Some people use a wadded up piece of Kleenex, but since I have a blending stump, I'm going to use my blending stump. Just softens my lines up for this situation. Sometimes when you're shading, you wouldn't use a blending stump. You would just very lightly shade and keep shading. But I really like it for this particular project because the sphere is so round and smooth that blending out those rough edges makes it look more like a ball. I was trying to think of a specific type of ball. Like a ball, like a pool table ball, whatever they're called. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, this is just my first round of going over it. I'm not done yet, although it already looks better than it did. If you're wondering why it's a little bit lighter right here, it's because as the light's hitting it, it's going past the ball. The light would go past the ball as well, and it would hit this table, and it would reflect and bounce back, and you would have this reflective light right here. And I'd actually think this reflective light would be a little bit further over here. And then just below that reflective light, it would get really dark. Let me switch to a 4B and see if that's... Thank you. All right, let me switch to a 4B and see if that gives me the look I want. Okay, so it would be a little bit darker on that edge. It'd actually be a lot darker. This is one of the darkest spots right here. And then your form shadow is what this is called. This is what gives it the form. And it's the spot that didn't get as much light from the light coming in. Hopefully you guys can see this. And I'm not really worrying about staying perfectly in my lines, because I don't really want there to be this perfect outline line. Because when you're dealing with any object, if you're trying to make it look realistic, you wouldn't have a perfect outlined object. It would be lighter, it would be darker, and it's the shape of the object that gives it its form and how the light and shadows cast on it. So I don't want it to look like it's perfectly outlined. I'll just clean it up with an eraser when I'm done. Apparently there's a cow in here. I don't know if you can hear my sound effects girl. She's having fun. It was her idea to do the toilet sound effect at the beginning. I said, whatever, I don't care. If it makes you laugh, it makes me happy. Okay, so I'm going to get this a little darker through here. You don't say. This should not be as dark as this here, so I'm going to just lightly go over that, because that's just a reflective light, so it wouldn't be as light as the form light would be, which is where it directly hits. And we'll get to that cast shadow in just a second. We just want to make sure we got our, oops. See what happens when you push a little too hard, you get these little dark spots. That's me trying to hurry for you guys. So when you do it, you might want to take your time and go a little bit slower. It's good practice for shading. And I'm just trying to go through it a lot faster than I normally would. If you have the ability to use charcoals at your house, charcoals are so much fun to use, especially for projects like this, where if you just did like a circle and turn it to a sphere, or a triangle and make it into a, not a cylinder, what is
Triangular prism?
No, it wouldn't be a prism. I'm drawing a blank. A cone, yeah. A cone, I guess would be right. Or if you have a cylinder and you, or, which wouldn't be a triangle, but anyway. You get what I mean. If you're trying to make 2D shapes go into 3D shapes. Sorry, it's hard for me to think and do art at the same time, which is why I really like art, because if I'm sitting here working on art, I don't think about anything but the art. I just sit and it like totally relaxes me, makes my mind just go into a happy place. Okay.
I wanted to do but...
Okay, I'm gonna try to lighten up this form light or a highlight that hits it. Oh, see, it's on my fingers. It works good for blending, but I just brought all that color right back into that spot that I just erased, so I'll have to go back and erase it again, but I'll use it to get this edge first. I feel like we need music. I'm a little bit nervous to see what music you pick, though.
Oh, wait. I have to do something.
It'll be Baby Shark, do 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 do.
Yeah,
So while I'm erasing around my edge to make it a little bit more defined and clean it up a little, one morning my sweet daughter was sleeping in, and I thought, wow, she needs to get up because it's like 10. And so I turned on Baby Shark, and it was and I turned it up really loud, and it woke her up. And her cat. Everybody wondered what was going on.
She had huge eyes.
Well, she was okay.
That's weird.
Well, that one was weird sound effects. So yeah. Thanks for sharing that one.
What? I didn't think it would be like that. That would be like
A little bit darker down here because it's definitely in the shadow down here. I feel like I've lost my shape of my sphere a little bit, but you can always clean that up and make it more cylindrical in shape again. Okay, I could keep going and going and going, because really, you really could just keep going. You just want to try to make sure that you get at least each one of those 5 values into your sphere. Maybe I'm going to try to brighten up this little center spot a little bit more. Okay. Clean it up one more time a little bit. I don't want that perfect edge right there. So I'm going to erase my perfect edges. I like this song. It just makes me happy. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and add in the cast shadow. Cast shadow is going to come right off the bottom of this and up here a little bit, curve out. And the cast shadow is going to be the absolute darkest part. So this is where I'm going to push a little bit harder. Try to get that color in there that I want. And again, go in one direction and then turn your paper and shade the other direction. It'll help get a much cleaner, smoother effect. especially with graphite pencils. So I'm going to turn it and come in this way. Later this week, we are going to do a class that is, I think I have it scheduled for Friday, a kind of Japanese art called manga. And it is not really a realistic person by any means, but it's a good way to practice drawing the human head, because we're going to try to get that that head on our manga art to look more 3D using shading and a little bit of perspective drawing. So that class might be a little bit more geared for slightly older kids, but you know, I welcome everybody to try it, because you never know. You could have like some prodigy kid who's an artist. I've worked with some kids when I taught that they were 5 years old and they drew better than most teenagers I know. So I was like, wow, that's impressive. On this one, you want to kind of lightly fade out your line as you go out, because that's pretty much what shadows do. If you look at them, they'll start to kind of fade out that way. Hopefully I'm still in the picture. I'll turn it a little bit so you can see. I do, however, want to make sure this line doesn't get too clumpy down here, so I'm going to clean that up. And then, like I said, if you really wanted to, you could shade this background to this line a really dark, probably somewhere in between the darkest value and the second darkest value, and then do the bottom here somewhere between the second lightest to the middle value and shade all that in. And it'll really make this sphere pop right out for you. I could keep going and play with this for hours, but I think you guys are gonna get bored watching it. But this is one way to help get that 3D look versus a 2D. So it's the difference between if I had a sphere or I just drew a circle. 2D, 3D. This is really important. Like I said, if you're drawing a human face, you would think again, where does that light come in? Is it hitting right in the middle of the face? That would be the lightest, right around that crest of the nose, and down the sides it would start to get darker. And you wouldn't jump from the lightest to the darkest value. You want to slowly go down to it. And then darkest would be on that outside edge if the light is coming in and hitting the face right in the center. Same thing with anything you draw, anything at all. So this will help your art look more realistic. Like I said, it's fun to do, and I also really enjoy it because it's a good stress reliever to just sit and shade like this. Drawing something's fun, but when you're adding color or you're shading in value, it really like makes your mind quit thinking about other things, and it's a great stress reliever, so I highly recommend it. I hope you guys had fun. We'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's class, I believe, is salt dough. Salt dough. We're going to sculpt something fun for spring. You will need your parents' help at the end of tomorrow's class to be able to finish tomorrow's class. We won't be able to finish tomorrow's artwork until Wednesday. It's a two-part thing because it's whenever you're sculpting, it takes a little bit longer. So I hope you guys had fun, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye. See my messy hands. Bye.